1 second. Okay, you're all set.
All right. I will call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of our December 10th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review them, and are there any edits or changes to those minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve them?
I'll motion.
Thank you,
I'll
Joe.
second.
Thank you, Tony. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The minutes are approved. The next item is to review the real estate and broker services RFP response. Just so we're all, I guess, grounded, Anna, can you just give us a quick 30-second background on what we're doing here with regards to this, and then go through the single response that we got?
Of course. Thank you, Jay. As you all know, Comida owns 3 parcels in the town of on Brew Road in the town of Riga, and the properties have been on the market for quite some time, but the phone number attached to the site goes straight to the Director of Real Property Services here in Monroe County, and it's a bit of a clunky process here. Whenever inquiries come in, we just kind of passively react to them. And in the interest of getting this property off of our books and back on the tax rolls, we'd like to engage a brokerage firm to actively market and promote the sale of the property, clean it up a little bit. We received one response to the RFP that we issued, and this response came from Pyramid Brokerage Company, Cushman and Wakefield. And the request is for a 10% commission on the sale of the property, right? Yeah. And you all received in your board, your executive committee, or sorry, your governance committee materials, a copy of the response. Does that sufficiently answer the question, Jay?
It does. Just want to make sure before we have a discussion, everybody is grounded in what we're trying to do here.
So I got a question real quick. I just want to make sure I'm clear. They're saying 10%?
That's what they put in the document. Robin, do you know what page of the response that
I think it's on page 30 out of 35 of the package we got.
It's on page 27 of their proposal.
compensation? The slide says 10. The slide is titled compensation, and it says owners shall pay to broker a fee or commission of 10% of the purchase price of the vacant land. If. And then there are a couple of bullet points there. If during the term hereof the property is sold, exchanged, or otherwise transferred by owner, regardless of whether the purchaser was found by broker. So if we sell the property without involving them, obviously we don't have to pay them the 10%. And if an agreement of sale, exchange, or other transfer is made or entered into within 1 year after the termination of the agreement. Anyhow, so a couple of caveats there. And Robin just made this point. We're not certain what the industry standard is in industrial and commercial real estate transactions as to commission percentages. Joe, you mentioned you had a question.
Yeah. So did the commission agreement? So this is an initial commission agreement. I mean, we haven't signed a commission agreement with them, correct?
No, we've not. That's up to the board.
I mean, I'm just going to give you my 2 cents. I mean, I've never paid more than 6% commercially ever in 30 years. So I don't know why we would consider paying them 4% of taxpayers' money than than I think is industry standard. But I mean, that's just my 2 cents.
Joe, I think, yeah, that's going to add up to way more than 2 cents. And I would second that in terms of what 6% is, I think, on the high side. I've seen things as low as 4% when it's negotiated.
Well, yeah, I mean, Jay, I've paid much less than even, I mean, I've paid as low as 2% on certain deals, but I think that's a negotiated thing, but I've never paid more. Top, I've never paid more than 6. And that's if there was another broker involved and they had to split the commission. Or if, we agreed to 6 points at the outset, then I would do that. But I can't see paying them 10 points. It just seems pretty heavy to me.
Joe, is that true also for undeveloped land?
Yeah,
raw
I mean,
land?
I think it's just a commercial standard across the board. The only time I've ever seen it proposed, again, I've never paid it, but the only time I've ever seen it proposed is in leasing a space, or maybe the commission is, so small that you'd give them a bump to make it at least worth their while. But, what's the listing price here?
There are 3 parcels. There is no listing price. We had them appraised recently. I know that 75 Brew Road is at $280,000. I'm just opening up the appraisal report right now.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So, their recommended pricing is on slide number 26, so right before compensation. Recommended ensemble sale price is $996,000.
All right, so $996,000. Let's say we only got 850,000, just for the sake of conversation. I mean, 6 points of that's $51,000.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like it's reasonable to me,
Joe, to your point, I would agree. I mean, the higher percentage on commissions tends to be for smaller deals to get brokers interested. But at a total listing price of just shy of $1 million, this does, in my experience, doesn't qualify as a small deal. My reaction was that this is high. This is above industry standards.
Yeah, you're talking about 52 acres.
Tony, what's your take?
Well, you might have to pay a participating broker as well. So, you're gonna typically on raw land, even though not many people pay it, it's 10%. But in order to get some interest lookers, you might have to at least pay 6% and have other brokers work with that, because the listing broker, unless it's an exclusive, is not going to necessarily push it out into the community, into the real estate community, unless he knows he's going to get a commission.
The county must have experience in, their real estate division. I think would have experience, right?
I mean, I think I would have no problem paying them 6 points on vacant land. I mean, vacant land's not easy to sell either. So, I don't have a problem. And to your point, Tony, if there's 2 brokers involved, they get 3 apiece. It's still 25,000 apiece. It's
Right.
still not terrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So does this committee want, is the thinking that we should negotiate with Pyramid down to a 6% commission?
What do we normally pay, in real estate transactions involving land in the county? This can't be the first time they've had a project like this.
So the last time there was any activity on this piece of land,
not this piece, but it's a large county. They have a real estate division, right? So what's their experience been for pricing?
That I don't know. I can get some information from our purchasing department about other instances where the county has sold off real property and enlisted a broker.
That would be great.
But I think to the conversation we were just having, it sounds like the industry standard is between 4% and 6%. And 10% is a pretty big number.
I think Ann's suggestion, like, so let's see what's happened in the past, and you know, that'll be a another data point. And if it is 6%, I think we can, you know, we can go back and negotiate with these folks. Or Rachel, would it be acceptable if we reached out to others and said, hey, would they be willing to submit and kind of rebid this as well if these folks at Pyramid aren't willing to negotiate?
I'm just talking with Robin. So if we elect not to go with Pyramid, I think we'd have to just issue the RFP again and solicit new responses. And I don't, you know, there's no particular hurry to sell the property.
Right.
And given the time of year, I don't think we're going to be getting much action on it anyway. So, you know, we did get a light response. It might be worth issuing another RFP.
Yeah, and you know, let's see what the percentage comes back, if the county has something, and then we can decide what to do. And if we decide we do want to go out with another RFP, I mean, the easiest might be to try and negotiate with them. I just texted a broker friend of mine, and I'll read you what he says verbatim. He says, well, as usual, nothing typical. And this was unsolicited. Pyramid will tell you 10% and try to get to 8%, to try and get 8%. He goes, ultimately, it comes down to the size of the transactions, but typically it's 6%.
Right. And so we're going to want to set a not to exceed. If we elect to go with Pyramid, we'll want to set a not to exceed commission. And, you know, 6%. I mean, I certainly didn't know about the commercial market, but knowing residential property, I know that it's 6%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should also mention that I received a phone call yesterday, again, through this network of folks reach out to Tim Murphy in Real Property, and then he'll pass the contacts to me. But a real estate agent contacted me about the property and indicated that he had an interested buyer for 75 Brew Road, which is, I think, the most attractive parcel of the three because it's got visibility on the 490. And he mentioned that he didn't want to have to, he would want to negotiate directly with us, with the county. And in that case, you know, that would be a sale without involvement of a broker and no commission. So it's possible that those inquiries will still come through.
Right. And Anna, I just want to make, the way I read this proposal is that regardless of how it sells, with or without Pyramid's involvement, that they're going to get their 10%.
I read it.
Yes.
Is that the way you read it too?
Yeah, Robin.
I may have heard it incorrectly.
No, that's how I read. That's how I read it with their is.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. All right. So if there's no urgency, I guess we can, we'll wait to, you know, hear what the county has to say, and then we can decide what is an appropriate next step. My recommendation is if the county comes back and says, yes, 6% is typical, rather than re-RFPing, we go to Pyramid and see if they'll agree to 6%. If they agree to 6%, I would be comfortable saying, let's move forward with them. If they don't, then maybe we go out with another RFP. Joe, Tony, what do you guys think of that?
I agree with that, Jay. That makes
That's
total
fine.
sense.
That's fine, Jay.
And the only other thing that I want to mention to you is I just can't see, I don't know what the county's done in the past, but if they've overpaid in the past, I can't see repeating the same mistake twice. If we know what industry standard is, you know, I just can't see paying more than anybody else does.
It's a great point. I'm gonna reach out to our purchasing and real property departments just to get a sense of, what types of transactions may have taken place in recent history that we could compare.
Have we talked to the people at Pyramid about this? Have they, was there any conversation around, since it's 3 parcels, about, gee, they'd like to just sell like 2/3 of it, or what if we got an offer for one, did they, was that even part of that discussion about?
No, we haven't had any conversation with them about
Oh, I see.
what
Okay.
their vision or their plan might be if we were to grant them this opportunity.
Interesting to know whether if we started breaking it up, that would put us, at a disadvantage, because maybe there's one of these properties that are more attractive than the other, and so it'd be better, and we want to offload them, do them as a group,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
as opposed to splitting them up. I just wondered if you'd had that conversation.
No, not yet. We certainly should have conversations like that, when the time comes, if we grant the contract to Pyramid or he handle any inquiries ourselves, we'll want to have an understanding, because like I mentioned earlier, one parcel of the 3 in particular is probably the most attractive, and
Right.
yeah.
Anna, to that point, if you've already received an inquiry, I'm assuming will you be entertaining that? Or is the intent to wait until this is signed or before having those conversations?
Our plan is to entertain it. I did indicate to this person that conversations are underway with our board to engage with a service provider to broker the site and handle any transactions, but that has not been formalized yet. And so he understands that he has to move quickly if he wants to avoid having to deal with a brokerage firm potentially, pending board approval.
Right. Well played.
Has the county used a particular brokerage company in the past that they would recommend?
That's another good question for purchasing.
Tim Murphy. We'll get in touch with Tim Murphy. We've had initial conversations with him. I'm not exactly sure the county uses brokers because they have their own real estate department, real property division. So we'll find that out.
Okay.
And so to that end, we have between now and Tuesday before our meeting to either get these questions answered, go back to Pyramid. So the approval of this is on the agenda, but we can always take that off if we're not in a position to approve a contract with Pyramid on Tuesday. We'll just take that off the agenda.
Yeah, Rachel, what I would do is let's plan on taking it off. And if we get to the point where we're ready to present, we can, because I think we need to hear back from them. And then if we want to move with Pyramid, we've got to, Anna needs to talk to them and see if they are willing to reduce it. And then we need to get a reproposal. So, certainly within the realm of possibility, but I think more likely it's going to be on the March agenda.
Sounds
That's
like a
fine.
good path.
We'll do a
Alright.
revised agenda.
Any more discussion or input or comments about this proposal? All right, I think we have a plan going forward. The next item is a general housing discussion of Comida's housing policy. And this was put on the agenda at my request. So I will get on a soapbox here for a minute and
I'll go right ahead.
and want to hear,
Do that as chair.
as we've looked at projects that have come before us, I will tell you personally, some of the projects that I have the most trouble with are the housing projects, for the main reason that it is my belief that that housing is ultimately a sign that we have a very robust economy. That as as more people move into the area, or their economic situation improves, the demand for housing goes up, and that you can. It's not a situation where if you build it, they will come. If we build more housing, but we're not getting more people into the area and in better jobs, that's not necessarily economic. It's not going to create a robust long-term economy. And I'm particularly troubled by the luxury housing, because I ultimately think if we are asking the taxpayers to contribute in one form or another to a project, there ought to be a public benefit. And I think, I asked Robin to pull out 600 East Avenue just because those are one-bedroom apartments renting for $2,200. And it is my sincerest hope that we have a abundance of people in the community who have the ability to pay $2,200 a month for one-bedroom apartments. But I think really where the need is in our community is for affordable housing. And if we're going to have projects that come through asking for some taxpayer assistance, I think we should rightly ask what does the community get? And I would be more amenable to approve, to having housing if we can say that there's an increase in affordable housing. We're deconcentrating poverty. That has been shown to work in many cities around the country. Or a housing project is going to create a public space or something we can point to as a tangible public benefit. I know Rachel had pulled out housing policies across other IDAs. And Rachel, I don't know if you want to comment. I know many of them are silent on IDAs, but there are some that exclude housing and others that include it. And if you work with some and can share some of their thinking, I think that would be beneficial. And then I'd be interested in getting everyone's opinion.
Sure. I am working on updating the materials that Robin had sent out. They're 2 years old now, and these IDAs may have different housing policies than they had 2 years ago. So we're in the process of updating that research. Some, as you mentioned, have right in their UTEP that they do not incentivize housing. Others have like a 485B equivalent abatement schedule versus what we use as our standard jobs plus abatement schedule. So there are varying approaches to housing county by county, depending on the need. Many of our clients have commissioned studies on housing and paid for them by a third party to go ahead and do that. For example, I know Genesee County has done so because they have a housing issue that they're seeking to address. And so they did pay for a study to be done in Genesee County to determine what housing they should be doing. That board, and public information, was not in favor of housing, call it 6 years ago when I was working with them. And they have shifted and have done a housing study and are now looking at incentivizing housing. So all that being said, it varies, and it varies on the need of the community, of course.
And I think that makes good sense. I mean, if there's something out there that says there's a need for housing and a particular type of housing, that's where I think the public-private, kind of handshake should go. That we should provide incentives to that particular housing, and within reason. If they come back and say there's a shortage of $2,200 one bedrooms, I think that's a different story, or at least we should have a discussion on that. I guess, if that's what it takes to attract really high tech workers, and there's a shortage of that type of skill set here, and it's the housing that's keeping them from it, then I think there's an argument to be made there. But so I guess, my objective is just to get a dialogue started, but eventually to get to some actionable items so that we can determine thoughtfully as a board what we want to do with housing. And Joe, I know you've got a great deal of experience in this area. This is your day job. And I know you have not availed yourself of a lot of Comida's benefits or any of Comida's benefits. I guess I'd like to turn the floor over to you because you have way more insight than I do.
Yeah, Jay, here's what I'll share with you. I agree with everything you said. I think we don't need to be putting taxpayers' money in projects that are for, white collar, young professionals, projects that are going to be profitable in areas that are sought after areas, whether it's from a standpoint of somebody living there or a developer. I don't think that's the right use of our funds, and I don't think that's the best way to serve the community. I think those dollars should go to areas that without Comida's help would not be developed, buildings that are completely deteriorating that without some Comida intervention we would lose. And I think that money should go to projects that are not as profitable because the areas are not as good. And I think if you don't provide housing in a market that most developers really don't get too involved in. I know I don't, me personally, I don't get involved in low income. I did in the past, not easy. So I could see money going towards those projects if they're in the right area. But it makes no sense to me, especially if it's in, again, not to be redundant, but I mean, just exercise common sense. If it's in a good area that would be developed anyway, and it's serving a demographic that can afford to live there, that's going to happen on its own. That's going to happen. That's going to happen organically. That's just capitalism at work. That it doesn't need our help. It's areas that are struggling, areas that wouldn't get developed, serving a demographic that is more difficult for them to find housing. That their housing needs to be subsidized or they can't afford it. That's what we need to be doing. And if you get in the car and you take a ride through the city, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out where those areas are. And if you look at some of the projects that we've done, that the county has supported in the past, a lot of those projects would have happened anyway. And those projects are profitable without Comida money. So that's what we need to be thinking about, in my opinion.
Tony, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with both of you, but the only, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, the only consideration, I think when things have come up in the city is always for it. There's areas that you wouldn't think are distressed downtown, but in a distressed tract that are downtown that we've approved. So it's a quandary because you got to look at what the city's looking at too. Outside of the city, there's next to East Rochester, I don't think there's any distressed areas, Rachel, is there?
It's actually quite surprising when we pulled the census tract information, how many areas turn up being qualified as highly distressed or low to mod census tract.
Yeah, and then there's
more
also,
than you think.
yeah, then there's also the ones that by rule we can go if it's adjacent to a distressed area, right? So that would theoretically, if we looked at it, it would, you could look at places in Brighton that no one would think were distressed or actually thriving.
And it has to be directly contiguous to the.
Right. But if we were to take a look at streets right along East Ave, like
Yep.
Grosvenor and Council Rock. Those are adjacent to a distressed area.
There.
And if there was a housing project there, that would qualify. And I think that's part of what the board, that's why this board exists, even though those meet the qualifications. I think having a local board who knows the area should say, any reasonable person would say, this is not this isn't an area that needs, isn't distressed. So, but
If I may, since we're on the census tract data, we aren't required to pull census tract data on housing. We have done so as a practice to address some of the concerns that you're raising. And many times we do find that the housing projects are in or adjacent to, as you mentioned, highly distressed census tracts. As you know, we've also looked at town comprehensive plans when we've done some recent housing projects. Webster, Greece, I think Henrietta come to mind in pulling their comprehensive plans and sharing that with the board, and also support letters. So there are some things that we've done in the last, call it 3 years, to address some of these concerns that are being raised, and have done, we've made policy in certain respect without it being written.
Yep.
And, I think that's really what the objective is to, reach a more defined policy while educating ourselves at the same time with what other IDs doing and what are the community needs, as you mentioned, Jay. We can make an assumption that it's affordable housing. Maybe it is. I don't know that any of us know for sure. And, we have a fair amount of money that we could pay for a study to be done so that we can be a more educated board approaching the needs of our community as far as housing goes. One other small point that I think is important in conveying our message as a board, not just in this context, but in the broader context, is that under no circumstance are we distributing money or taxpayer dollars. We abate new value only. Existing value on the projects that we incentivize continues to be paid at 100%. And only new value as a result of the project investment is what we abate. And then over time, the real property taxes are built up to 100%. So I just raised that because it is the criticism that IDAs take taxpayer money. And I just want to be careful that we don't echo that false narrative at all.
that's a great point, Rachel, that it's not like we're giving away taxpayer money, but it is being taxpayer supported in the sense of the abatement. Is that an accurate way to look at it?
Well, neighboring properties are not going to see an increase in their assessment or their taxes as a result of an incentivized project by the IDA.
So how should we?
Valuation stays the same,
Right.
and they continue to pay on that. If it's $100,000 assessment, they continue to pay on that. Special district charges are always based on that full assessed value. So it's not as if we're abating fire safety that then other members of the community need to make up for that abatement. We never abate the special district charges or anything of that nature.
Okay, so we should just is an accurate way to refer to it as these are projects that receive Comida incentives. We'll just use a general statement like that.
Tax incentives.
Is that okay? And do you have any thoughts?
Well, I do. I was interested in this conversation because I think, we have helped to influence in large part, I think, by our members, by you and other board members saying, okay, fine. If you want our help with residential, a lot of our projects are mixed use, we'd like to see, a low cost housing component of your project. And we do, I think, shy away from, the the luxury. This was back in 16, but I think today, if you would just see our behavior around these, is I think we try to, we work with the city on their COE program. I mean, they're certainly in a distressed area. The Aqueduct, the Strong Museum of Play, the Metropolitan, the Xerox building. We've been a partner with the redevelopment of the downtown area. And a lot of that has been around, residential housing units. And the latest one that we talked about, I think, was the Xerox building, where a lot of those units will be for students. That's their primary target. Students from U of R, from RIT, mixing that with some other urban renewal, urban redevelopment efforts. So we've been a partner with all of those projects. So, I guess we just would need to keep that in mind if we all of a sudden said, we don't do housing. Because so much of the redevelopment of downtown has included housing.
Yeah, no, and I don't think what the intent here is to start the dialogue and then see. Right now, I think our thinking has evolved, and I think that's great. This is more to say, should our policies be updated with that thinking, or should we, what is the logical next step? We haven't really done anything with the way our policies have been. And I appreciate everyone's input here, and I think there was a good discussion. I will throw a suggestion out. I would, Rachel, that study that Genesee County did, is that something they would be willing to share with us so we could just get a sense of what they looked at and how that study, what it concluded? And would you be able to update some of the other county IDAs, given it's 2 years old? And what I would be very interested in is the ones that, I like the idea of what Genesee County did, which is they did a study and said, here's where our needs are in housing, and this is where the IDA is going to support it. And it's going to support it based on the community needs. But other counties, in the absence of doing a study, just what was their thinking if they included or precluded housing? I think that would be very helpful, and that could be something we could have a follow-on discussion with. And the other couple elements that I'll throw out is, when I lived in Boston, they took approach to housing where they wanted to. Their study showed a need for a lack of affordable housing. And one thing they did is they looked at their fees and basically said, if you choose not to have an affordable component, by all means, you're allowed to do so. It's just that your fee to the IDA is higher. And if you have an affordable component, your fee is much lower. So that, I know some of the funds we use here from the IDA go to workforce development. It gives us a bigger pot of money to be able to re-engage on other economic development programs. Rachel, is that allowed? Can we have a tiered fee structure at all?
Yes, other IDAs do.
Okay.
They either have a different fee structure or they offer a different abatement schedule for housing, or a combination of both.
Okay.
So that's, within reason, of course. The sky's the limit with what your policies are, and of course wanting to fall in line with industry standards, which I am in the process of updating those. We have the benefit of having around 35 IDA clients that we can take a look at their policies, understand their rationale. Genesee County is the client. I can find out if they would be willing to share the study, and go from there. I'll definitely make the ask, and if anything, we can learn who did the study for them and look at hiring that firm or putting out an RFP for a firm to do a similar study on our behalf.
Yeah,
Rachel, are you
I'd like
talking, Rachel, that would be an expensive study because you're talking about all of Monroe County and then some.
Well, so to that point, Tony, your timing is apt. You'll recall that a year ago, I presided over my first Comida board meeting, and the county executive paid us a visit and asked for Comida's support in assisting the county with funding and effort to update its comprehensive plan, which hasn't been updated since 1972. And that was incorporated into our spending plan for 2021.
Oh, wonderful.
Has been selected, and an announcement is coming down pretty soon about this effort. It'll be a long-term study. It's going to take about 2 years, but it's going to be very robust with a strong focus on equity and economic disparities, as well as social justice. So that study will certainly take a look at the folks that perform that project will be taking a look at all county operations and policies, including looking at Comida and how we administer economic incentives to projects, including housing developments, and housing is a part of the plan as well and the scope of work. So I think the timing is pretty good.
Does that include, that includes the city of Rochester, right?
Yes, the city of Rochester updated their comprehensive plan quite recently, and so the consultants will be taking a look at all of the various municipal comprehensive plans, including the cities, and we'll also conduct a separate effort to supplement some of that information.
So it's probably going to take 2 years, and it fits in with a lot of the things the federal government is suggesting as well. But
Right.
Wouldn't we benefit ourselves to look at a project one at a time as opposed and wait for the study to come along?
That's also a possibility. We could.
I mean, otherwise we're really trying to create new tracks where there's tracks already been laid down.
Tony, I think the idea here was, to begin the dialogue with the eventual goal of determining whether our policies need to be updated. And until such time, I think, we continue to look at real estate projects one at a time. But I think what I'm trying to do is create at least have a plan on what we're going to do. If we decide, hey, we don't want to make a decision because we don't have the right data or framework until, this comprehensive plan is updated, and that's going to provide us with some insights, then at least we know what we're doing and we can table this for 2 years. If we think that, hey, that may or may not include, and, we can take a look at the Genesee study but
all right,
I just want to have a path forward because we've had these discussions, but I eventually want it to lead to a conclusion and an outcome. And that outcome could be nothing changes. We're comfortable doing what we're doing. But I just want to have done that consciously. And I feel like we haven't, we're having discussions, but like I said, we haven't reached any conclusions.
Oh, I'm good with that. Okay.
Yeah, and it makes sense for now when a project comes in front of us. I just think we look at it from the right lens and we take the right approach to it, and we're just cautious, of what deals we get involved in and which ones we don't.
Yep.
And that's what the board is there for, really.
Right. Right. Exactly. If we become a rubber stamp, then this is just a waste of all of our times.
Yeah.
I think the developers need to understand our criteria. And if we change our policies, that would affect them in development projects going forward. I think there's an issue if they qualify, based on our current practice and policies, and then start changing those sort of on the fly or during the meeting, or that's where
Yeah.
I think we would run into some pushback. But I agree, we ought to do a study. If we don't have to wait for a couple of years, that's probably a good thing.
I got a question for Joe. Joe, if you get customers coming to rent and they're on welfare, you're quoting them the rate, correct? Or do you have to change your policies?
No, so, I have fixed rates, Tony. So if somebody applies and we have standards, right? So,
Right.
so we have a credit limit. I really don't get into income with people. I strictly go by credit. So we have a credit standard and we have a price point. So I'll give you an example. We have some townhouses in Greece that I own. We recently had somebody, it's not a Section 8 project, but we had a lady that applied there that met our credit criteria that's on Section 8. So we filled out all the Section 8 paperwork. We did all the Section 8 inspections. We got all that done for her and she rented the space.
So that's paying a portion of her rent then.
So Section 8 will subsidize a piece of her rent.
Correct.
Even though it's
Right.
not a Section 8 project, right, Tony? So
Yeah.
tomorrow, Tony, you could go build a complex that's a Section 8 complex, which, you lose some control over it. In other words, you can't really set credit limits and criteria for who you rent to. But so that's how that works. And then if any project that you own, if you have a standard, here's my pricing, here's our standard credit limit, and somebody meets that criteria and Section 8 approves of it, then then they can get subsidized at that location.
All right. Thanks for that clarification.
I think the Cedarwood Towers redevelopment project that we worked on, that was low cost, 1 bedroom. I think those were Section 8, as I recall. And there's been some others, but so there's requirements, for that. And we've tried to support, low cost housing, particularly when that's involved, to help redevelop a neighborhood or, bring back a more thriving economy and better living conditions for our residents, in the county. That was a good example, I think, of that, where our money went to good use. It was heartwarming to talk with a lot of the tenants in that building. They had to move out while they rebuilt all these towers, all these 1-bedroom apartments. But the heartwarming to see what a difference it made in their lives. I've probably told that story before, but when you see it and oh gosh, that's where our money went. It does make you feel like that's where it should be going.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree. And as Rachel said, not our money, but our incentives.
All right.
And I'll share this with everyone. If there's a need in our community, it's senior living Section 8, right? So I know this for sure, that if there's a hole in our housing in Monroe County, there's not enough senior citizen housing that's subsidized. There's just not enough. And if you are a senior and you need that type of housing, odds are you're going to end up on a waiting list someplace if you're lucky enough to get in at all. And I'm talking like, everybody familiar with Dunn Tower? Remember Dunn Tower and Gates? I mean, it's older now, but Dunn Tower is a prime example of subsidized senior housing. There's just not a lot of it, and it's very difficult for people to get in, and that demographic really struggles. And that's always been bothersome to me.
Yeah.
And we have an aging population here.
Correct.
It's going to become more of an issue. Mhm.
Well, I appreciate everybody's input. I think this has been a good discussion. As a follow-up, Rachel, we'll look to see whether Genesee County is gracious enough to share their study and updates on where other IDAs stand. And once we get that, we can, if we need to reconvene or, we'll do so at that time, once we've had a chance to digest that information.
Yep.
Does that sound good to everybody? Did I misinterpret or misstate what we want to do going forward?
Sounds good, Jay.
All right, very good. Is there any other business? Anna, Rachel, Robin?
Not at this time, but I appreciate all of your efforts, and this dialogue is really important. Like you said, Joe, if we're a rubber stamp board, these conversations wouldn't be happening. So you're all showing yourselves to be very engaged, and your volunteer support for the community is really valuable.
It's what we get paid for.
Discussion as well. So thanks a lot. And Joe and Tony and Jean.
All right, with that, if there's nothing else, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion.
I'll
Thank
second.
you. All right,